So, what if everything you've been taught about, like, hard work paying off is actually, well, what if it's setting you up to fail?
Which is a terrifying thought, honestly.
Right, it
Yeah.
totally is. Today, we're looking at why simply working hard might be the absolute worst possible metric for success, and how the whole traditional idea of being a genius has been completely misunderstood.
Yeah.
So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a big topic.
It is. We are pulling apart this really fascinating collection of sources, specifically an essay called The Seams of Excellence, Hiding Effort and Living Truth. And the mission today is to just fundamentally rethink how all these small, totally invisible details end up, dictating the reality of your life.
Yeah, and it's a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
To get us there, we're basically synthesizing this powerhouse lineup of thinkers.
Oh, yeah, the lineup is wild.
Right. We've got leadership theories from Simon Sinek, Seth Godin's marketing philosophy, the operational mindset of Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy.
And Leonardo da Vinci.
Exactly. We're literally opening up Da Vinci's personal notebooks because the goal is to figure out why that flawless lone mastermind image we usually picture when we hear the word genius is actually a deeply flawed concept.
Yeah, I want to jump right into that distinction, actually, because it totally sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. The material introduces this really sharp contrast from Simon Sinek.
The expert versus the genius.
Right. He divides people into these two categories, the expert and the genius.
Mhm.
And normally, I mean, we use those words interchangeably, right?
Oh, absolutely. We treat them like synonyms.
Exactly. But Sinek draws this hard line. He argues that when a sudden, accidental spark of brilliance happens, the expert immediately steps in and takes sole credit for
Yeah,
it.
they just claim it.
They completely erase the messy reality. They crop out all the people who helped them, and they present this completely finished, flawless surface to the world.
Which, to be fair, is a very natural human instinct. I mean, we are highly incentivized to perform competence, especially in the workplace.
Right. Nobody wants to look like they don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. But Sinek argues that the genius does the exact opposite. The genius actively admits that, hey, this was an accident. They publicly thank the people who helped them out.
They let the seams show.
Yes, they let the seams of the work show. And what makes this so profound is that, it isn't just a lesson in workplace manners or basic humility. Sinek is actually making a fundamental statement about our relationship to the truth.
And that distinction really, it really caught my attention because the expert is performing this polished version of reality, whereas the genius is living in actual reality.
Yeah, living in the messiness of it.
Right. It really makes me think about how we curate our own lives online. Like the expert is putting up that heavily filtered social media post, standing on top of a mountain looking totally immaculate.
Like they didn't even sweat.
Exactly, implying they practically just floated up there. But the genius is the one posting the shaky, out of breath footage where they're covered in mud and they're thanking the friend who physically dragged them up the last 100 yards.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
But I have to ask you about the underlying mechanics here, because if being a genius is messier and you're actively admitting to relying on luck or outside help, why do the sources frame this highly vulnerable position as a position of much greater strength?
Well, because that honesty roots you in reality. And reality, frankly, is the only place where actual sustainable results are generated.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, the material brings in this great quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson to reinforce this. He said, "What you do speaks so loud that I cannot hear what you say."
Oh, wow. That is hard.
It really does.
Yeah.
If we look at the psychology of the expert, their entire existence basically becomes this fragile PR campaign. They have to spend enormous amounts of energy just, maintaining the illusion that they are flawless and solitary.
Just constantly spinning plates.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But that PR spin is ultimately futile. I mean, you can claim sole credit all you want, but the actual output, the work itself, will eventually reveal the truth of how it was made. Actions are inherently louder than attributions.
Right, the work speaks for itself.
Right. The scaffolding of self-promotion eventually collapses because it isn't load-bearing.
So the expert fails because they're claiming too much credit at the finish line, but the sources point out an equally dangerous trap at the starting line. Right?
Oh, yeah. The effort trap.
Right, expecting a reward simply because you broke a sweat, which completely shifts the conversation from how we attribute success to how we evaluate the actual work itself.
And that shift is absolutely crucial because we have to move away from the perception of the work and actually look at the substance.
Mm-hmm.
There's this brilliant analogy provided by George Raveling. He asks us to picture a master carpenter arriving at a job site in the morning, right, wearing a full tool belt.
Okay, got it.
Now picture an apprentice arriving at the exact same site, also wearing a full tool belt.
Right.
Neither of them gets evaluated on the effort of simply showing up and wearing the tools. Like nobody gets a prize for putting on the belt.
Right. You don't get paid just for standing there looking ready.
Exactly. They are evaluated entirely on the house they build. Effort is a given. It's the floor, not the ceiling.
And Adam Grant, the organizational psychologist, he backs this up with an observation from his 2 decades of teaching.
Yeah, the student story.
Yeah, he talks about how students constantly come into his office arguing that their final grades should reflect the sheer amount of effort they put into writing a paper rather than just the quality of the paper itself.
But I stayed up all night.
Exactly. I spent 20 hours on this. And Grant's reply to them is just completely uncompromising. He tells them high marks are for excellence, not grit.
Which is, it's a tough pill to swallow.
It's brutal.
It is. But it's deeply necessary. Grant is really highlighting a fundamental flaw in how we perceive our own value.
But hold on, I need to push back on this a little bit on behalf of everyone listening. Because, from the moment we were born, we're totally saturated in this idea that hard work pays off.
Or it's the American dream, basically.
Right. We practically worship grit in our culture. So if we don't reward grit, aren't we just incentivizing people to only tackle easy projects where success is absolutely guaranteed?
I see where you're going.
How does a manager or a teacher reward risk-taking if we are only looking at the final grade and just totally dismissing the effort?
So that is a very fair pushback. It really is. But we have to look closely at what Grant and Raveling are actually saying here. They aren't dismissing effort. Not at all.
Okay.
They are demanding a profound clarification of what effort is actually for. The core philosophy here is that effort must transform into something.
Transform, okay.
Yeah. It has to become a tangible product or a sound strategic decision or a well-lived life. Untransformed effort, like just staring at a blank screen for 10 hours, sweating and grinding your teeth, that remains totally invisible in the ledger of reality.
Right, because nothing was actually produced.
Exactly. Taking a risk is fine. But if you take a risk and fail, the value is in the lesson learned. It's not in the mere fact that you burned calories trying. The student demanding an A just for trying is actually making the exact same psychological error as cynic's expert who claims sole credit.
Oh, wow, I see the connection now. They're both elevating the appearance of performance over the substance of the work.
Yes.
The expert wants you to look at their flawless image, and the student wants you to look at their sweat.
Right.
But neither of them wants you to look at the actual work.
Precisely. They are performing for an audience rather than serving the outcome.
That is so interesting. So when your focus shifts from the actual work to just, proving how hard you were sweating, you stop looking at the detail.
You lose sight of the target.
Right. And when you stop looking at the details, these tiny errors start slipping in. The sources suggest that failure rarely happens as some massive, sudden explosion. It is almost always a slow leak.
Which brings us to the operational reality of this mindset. Coach Tony Dungy, referencing a concept from his assistant, Joe Marciano, he calls this death by inches.
Death by inches.
Yeah. Dungy noticed this really specific, dangerous pattern in professional football. When a team is winning and everyone is feeling good about their effort, coaches start letting tiny, seemingly insignificant mistakes slide.
Like what kind of mistakes?
Like a receiver runs a route 1 yard short, or a lineman is 2 minutes late to a film session. It feels really petty to correct them when morale is so high and you're winning games.
All right, you don't want to be the bad guy.
Exactly. But suddenly, the team finds itself in a massive losing streak, and nobody can figure out why the wheels came off.
Because the mistakes didn't arrive all at once. They accumulated in the shadows.
Yes.
And Dungy applies this directly to our personal lives, which I find so compelling. We don't just wake up one morning and dramatically hurl ourselves off the path we intended for our careers or our families. We make a tiny 5-degree turn. We make one little compromise in a gray area, and we justify it to ourselves by saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal.
Right. And Dungy brings in this fantastic historical image from Martin Luther to illustrate the psychology of this drift.
Oh, the birds.
Yes, the hovering birds. Luther compared temptation and distraction to hovering birds. The danger isn't the first bird that flies overhead, like you can't control that. The danger is letting those birds land and begin to build a nest in your hair.
Oh, what an image.
Right. He also points to Proverbs, which advises not just avoiding the wrong path, but actively turning away from it. The mechanism of failure isn't about failing to be some cinematic hero in a moment of massive crisis. It's about a relentless, sustained attention to the incredibly small things.
Right. I mean, we all know the ship navigation metaphor. If you leave New York heading for Europe and your compass is off by just 5 degrees, you completely miss the entire continent.
You end up nowhere near it.
Exactly. But applying that concept to human psychology is kind of terrifying. When you claim sole credit for a group presentation on a Monday, that is your 5-degree drift.
Yeah.
You don't feel lost on Tuesday. The water looks exactly the same. But by Friday, you've built an entire persona based on hiding reality. So for you listening right now, consider your own daily routines. Where are you accepting a 5-degree drift just because it's not that big of a deal?
That is the essential question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Because that drift is basically invisible to the person experiencing it. And if we connect this death by inches back to the expert we discussed earlier, we start to see why the expert's behavior is so incredibly insidious.
How so?
Well, stepping in and taking the glory for a lucky accident doesn't feel like a dramatic moral failure in the moment. In a corporate environment, it often feels like confidence.
Right. It feels like hustle.
It feels like smart personal branding.
Yeah.
But it is a 5-degree moral drift. You are building a deeply ingrained habit of managing perception rather than pursuing the truth of your work.
Man, that internal drift is incredibly dangerous. But what happens when that obsession with your own effort blinds you to the outside world? Because we don't just drift internally. We fail when we become so fixated on our own little bubble that we forget we are operating within a larger environment.
Yeah, we forget the context.
Right. The sources bring in a story from Seth Godin about the Michelin Tire Company, and it just perfectly illustrates this systemic blindness.
Oh, this is a classic case study in the danger of the expert mindset. So Michelin, with all of their brilliant engineers, they successfully developed a completely puncture-proof tire.
Which sounds amazing.
It was. It was not a gimmick. It was a genuine revolutionary breakthrough in physics and manufacturing. But the project was a massive commercial failure.
And the reason it failed is just fascinating, because it wasn't because the tire didn't work, the tire was great. It was because Michelin completely ignored the ecosystem.
They engineered it in a vacuum.
Totally. They completely bypassed the local tire shops, the independent garages, and the everyday mechanics, and those mechanics lacked the specific training and the highly specialized new equipment required to actually service or even mount this revolutionary tire.
Yeah, and we really have to look at the underlying mechanism of that failure. Why did Michelin ignore the mechanics? Because they were suffering from the arrogance of the isolated expert.
Right.
They believed that a flawless product should automatically command the market, regardless of the reality on the ground. I mean, they saw the tire perfectly, but they were entirely blind to the ecosystem that the tire had to live in.
They just expected everyone else to adapt to them.
Exactly. And Godin synthesizes this by pointing out that working with a system is like having a highly skilled assistant constantly pushing you forward, but working against the system is like having a vandal actively destroying your work while you sleep.
Wow. Working against the system is like having a vandal. That is so good. And this circles right back to why Senec's genius always thanks others and admits to the role of luck. The genius is inherently a systems thinker.
Absolutely.
They recognize the vast, invisible infrastructure of people, timing, and resources that makes literally any outcome possible. Godin uses a surfing metaphor that nails this dynamic perfectly.
I love the surfing metaphor.
It's so clear, right? The expert claims they personally invented the incredible ride they just took, and they focus all their energy on polishing their own surfboard to look good for the cameras. But the genius studies the waves.
And that is the massive paradigm shift for anyone trying to achieve excellence. Better waves make better surfers.
Yeah.
The person who honestly studies the mechanics of the ocean, who acknowledges the massive power of the water beneath them, is infinitely better positioned to catch the next wave.
Right, because they know how it actually works.
Exactly. The expert, claiming all the glory for a ride they couldn't possibly have generated it alone, is going to drown the next time the tide changes because they don't understand the system. You cannot ride the wave if you are busy pretending you invented the ocean.
That's such a great line. Okay, so we've established some pretty heavy ground rules here. Just logging hours and showing your sweat does not equal excellence. We know we have to relentlessly police that 5-degree drift, and we have to pay deep attention to the ecosystem around us.
Right.
But There is a massive elephant in the room that we really need to reconcile. Because when we talk about genius, the ultimate historical example is Leonardo da Vinci.
Of course.
And Robert Greene's analysis of da Vinci shows that he labored more intensely than almost anyone in history. I mean, he spent endless, agonizing hours studying the complex geometry of light, dissecting human muscles to understand facial expressions, and, mapping out tiny gradations of shadow on the folds of a fabric gown.
He did. His notebooks are legendary for their obsessive detail. I mean, when Da Vinci wanted to paint in a way that captured life more accurately than any artist before him, he didn't achieve that by working less hard than his peers. He worked differently.
Okay, this is where I need you to connect the dots for us.
Sure.
Because if George Raveling says effort is not enough, and Adam Grant says don't reward grit, how do we reconcile that with Da Vinci laboring in a dark room for literally thousands of hours? What is the fundamental psychological difference between Da Vinci's massive effort and the college student begging Adam Grant for an A just because they stayed up all night?
Well, it all comes down to the audience for the effort.
The audience?
Yeah, the student or, the corporate expert staying late at the office just to be seen by the boss is performing their effort for an external audience. They're generating sweat as a currency to buy validation.
Oh, wow.
Da Vinci's effort was entirely genuine, and it was solely in service to the final result. I mean, he didn't dissect muscles and fill hundreds of notebook pages with shadow studies just so he could show off his notebooks to his wealthy patrons and say, look how hard I work.
Right. He wasn't doing performative overtime.
Exactly. He pursued the absolute objective truth of how light falls across a human cheekbone so that his paintings would carry that truth. And the magic is, when you look at a Da Vinci masterpiece, you do not see the effort. You don't see the thousands of hours of obsessive geometry.
You don't.
You just feel reality.
That is a brilliant distinction. The effort becomes invisible because it is true. Robert Greene notes this in the source material, saying, uncover the secret to any reality by uncovering the details. Da Vinci wasn't trying to prove his grit. He was serving the painting. The expert takes a generalization of reality and presents it as mastery. But the true genius goes deeper, finds what is actually there in the tiny details, and crucially, lets the final work carry that truth. They don't need to stand in front of the painting and announce how hard they worked on it.
And this brings us to the ultimate question of application. How do you actually sustain Da Vinci's level of genuine, invisible effort without constantly craving a round of applause?
Right, because we all want validation.
We do. And how do you maintain the vigilance required to spot Tony Dungy's 5-degree drift in your own life?
Well, the sources argue that you have to build a deeply ingrained psychological anchor. Erwan LeCour frames this through the concept of a covenant.
A covenant.
Yeah. He argues that you must establish a strict personal morality, like a set of non-negotiable values for how you operate in the dark when literally no one is watching. Because if you don't have a true north, you cannot possibly notice a 5-degree drift. You literally have nothing fixed to drift away from.
That makes perfect sense. Without a covenant, those 5-degree turns just silently accumulate until you are entirely lost. It is about building the infrastructure of your own character.
Yeah.
The author Isabel Allende touches on this exact mechanism, actually. She observes that human beings possess an unsuspected reserve of strength inside them, but that strength only emerges when life actually puts us to the test. A covenant isn't about pretending to be superhuman from day one. It's about being ruthlessly honest with yourself about your direction, so that when the test comes, your reserves are available.
It is about noticing the turns. Swatting away the nesting birds before they settle and correcting the small invisible things before they become your permanent new normal.
Right.
The synthesis of our sources closes with this really powerful thought from Norman Vincent Peale's The Magic of Thinking Big, alongside a philosophy often attributed to John Quincy Adams.
Oh, the wear out versus rust out idea.
Yes. The underlying message is a call to action. Refuse to confuse merely not dying with actually living. It is far better to wear out in the pursuit of genuine excellence than to rust out in the safety of the expert's PR bubble. You inspire others to dream more and do more, not by standing around claiming greatness, but by continually demonstrating it in the tiny, unglamorous details of your work.
Those unglamorous details are the seams of a life. Your personal covenants, the 5-degree errors you catch and correct, the invisible hours you spend mastering your craft in service of the outcome, they help you loudly and gratefully acknowledge.
Yeah.
The fragile expert spends all their energy trying to hide those seams to look perfect. The true genius sews them so well that they let them show.
Because the seams are where the real story actually lives. I mean, Da Vinci's obsessive shadow studies, the independent tire shops that Michelin arrogantly ignored, the minor route running mistakes the losing coach overlooked, those are the load-bearing structures of reality.
And if what you do speaks so loudly that no one can hear what you say, then all the energy you spend explaining your brilliance is entirely wasted. All that energy belongs in the work itself.
So let's bring this entire journey together. We have traveled all the way from Simon Sinek's warning against the flawless PR-managed perception, straight through the illusion of effort, the danger of the five-degree drift, and finally to Leonardo da Vinci's invisible labor in the shadows.
It's been quite a ride.
It really has. And the ultimate takeaway here isn't that you should try to hide how the sausage gets made. It's that you should be brave enough and honest enough to sew the seams so well that you don't have to hide them.
You stop managing the perception and you start managing the reality.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to leave you with a brand new, kind of challenging application of this material to ponder on your own as you go about your day. Since we now know that true excellence requires genuine effort that serves the product, not performed effort, to prove we tried, think about your own workplace.
Oh, this is a good one.
Right. Think about modern corporate culture. With all of its visibility metrics, performative self-reviews, endless status updates, and the pressure to show your face on video calls, how much of our daily environment actually incentivizes us to be the fragile expert rather than the true genius? Next time you are asked to show your work or log your hours, ask yourself, are you just proving your grit to an audience to secure your grade, or are you truly serving the truth of the final product?
Are you just polishing the scaffolding so everyone can see it, or are you actually tailoring the suit?
We all love the magic of the finished skyscraper or that perfectly draped suit, but the real genius is found in the messy tailoring room. Don't be afraid of the chalk lines. Embrace the seams. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.